The posting came through the Federal Jobs Board in February, which should have been my first warning. Nobody advertises backcountry ranger positions in February. The season doesn't start until late April in most of Alaska, and even then, you're looking at skeleton crews until the snow clears enough for regular patrols. But Ketchikan District was hiring immediately, and the pay was 40% above standard GS5 rate, and I owed $11,000 to a hospital in Juneau that had started sending letters with phrases like final notice and collections action. I took the ferry from Bellingham. 3 days on the water gave me time to read the orientation packet they'd mailed. Most of it was standard: radio protocols, bear encounter procedures, hypothermia response, the usual liability waivers. But clipped to the back was a single photocopied page, unsigned, with a handwritten note in the margin that said, "Read first." The page listed 12 items under the heading, Supplemental Intake Procedures for Missing Persons Recovery. I read it twice on the ferry, decided it was some kind of hazing document, and put it in my duffel. The station was 47 miles from the nearest paved road, accessible only by float plane or a 12-mile foot trail that closed completely from October through March. My supervisor flew me in himself. His name was Garrett, and he was the kind of man who seemed to have been carved from the same granite as the mountains behind the station. 60 years old, maybe older. He didn't speak during the flight except to point out landmarks. The glacier to the north, the closed trail to the east, the intake shelter 200 yards southwest of the main station. The station itself was a 2-story timber structure with a wraparound porch, a shortwave radio room, and a basement I was told not to enter after dark. Garrett handed me 12 keys on a steel ring. Each key was tagged with a number and a location. Key 7 was tagged, Intake Shelter, Do Not Lose. "You read the supplement?" Garrett asked. "The photocopied page." "That's the one." I read it. He nodded once. "Good. Read it again tonight. I'll be back in 6 days for the supply drop. Radio check every 12 hours on Channel 4. Emergency traffic on Channel 9, but don't use 9 unless you mean it." He left me with 300 pounds of provisions, a Remington 12 gauge, 48 flares, and a logbook that went back 11 years. The previous entries were sparse, mostly weather notations and wildlife sightings, but every few pages, someone had written MP Recovery, followed by a date and a single word: cleared or processed, or twice in the past 2 years, refused. I didn't know what refused meant yet. That first night, I sat at the desk in the radio room and read the supplement again. This time, I copied it into my field notebook, word for word, because the photocopy was faded and I couldn't afford to misread anything. Here is what it said. 1. All returning hikers must be processed at the intake shelter, never the main station. The intake shelter is located 214 yards southwest of the station porch. You will find the key on your ring, number 7. 2. When a missing person returns, verify their permit number against the registry before making eye contact. The registry binder is kept in the intake shelter's north cabinet. Do not bring the registry to the main station. 3. Do not respond if a returning hiker calls you by name before you have introduced yourself. This includes your first name, last name, or call sign. If this occurs, return to the main station without speaking and radio channel 4 with code Kingfisher. Do not process that hiker. 4. Between 1:45 a.m. and 2:15 a.m., do not look toward the tree line north of the station, regardless of what you hear. You may look at the floor, the walls, or your hands. After 2:15 a.m., you may resume normal observation. 5. If a returning hiker cannot remember their emergency contact's first name, radio channel 4 with code LARCH and do not allow them inside any structure. Wait for instruction. 6. Count the items in a returned hiker's pack. If the count differs from their registered manifest by more than 3 items, you must have a second ranger present for processing. If you are alone, do not process that hiker until the supply drop. 7. Verify that all returning hikers cast a shadow before sundown. After sundown, this verification is not possible. Plan accordingly. 8. Do not acknowledge any person who approaches from Trail 7. Trail 7 has been closed for 11 years. No legitimate hiker will use that trail. 9. If you hear knocking at the station door after 11 p.m., respond only after the 3rd knock. Responding to the 1st or 2nd knock will be treated as a resignation. 10. Missing persons found within 2 miles of the glacier are to be processed at dawn only. If they return at night, direct them to the intake shelter and tell them to wait. Do not explain why. 11. If a returning hiker's boots are dry and clean despite current trail conditions, radio dispatch immediately before continuing intake. 12. Do not discuss these procedures with anyone who has been missing for more than 72 hours. I finished copying the list at 11:23 p.m. Outside, the temperature had dropped to 19 degrees. The wind was coming from the north, steady at 12 miles per hour, and I could hear it moving through the spruce trees like something breathing. I locked the station door, checked the locks twice, and went to bed with the supplement under my pillow. The first week passed without incident. I ran patrols, checked the permit boxes at trailheads 2 and 3, inventoried supplies, and radioed Garrett every 12 hours with weather and status updates. The missing persons board in the radio room showed 3 active cases. A solo backpacker named Douglas Venn, last seen 9 days ago near the glacier. A married couple named Chen, overdue by 4 days. And a wildlife photographer named Margaret Okafor, missing for 6 weeks. 6 weeks was a long time. Long enough that the search teams had stopped coming. Long enough that her file had been moved to the presumed stack. On day 8, the Chens came back. I spotted them at 2:17 p.m., moving down from the ridgeline on Trail 4. They were walking slowly, which was normal for exhausted hikers, and they were holding hands, which matched the description in their permit file. I watched them through binoculars for 6 full minutes before I went to the intake shelter. The shelter was 12 feet by 12 feet, plywood walls, a single window facing north, and a metal desk with the registry binder chained to a bracket. There was a propane heater, a folding cot, and a door that locked from the inside. Key 7 fit the exterior deadbolt. I let myself in, lit the heater, and waited. The Chens reached the shelter at 2:51 p.m. I know the time because I had learned, by then, to write everything down. "Hello," the woman called. "Is someone there? We're the Chens. We filed a permit last Tuesday. We got turned around near..." "Stop there, please." I kept my voice flat, professional. "I need you both to remove your packs and set them on the ground. Then I need you to read me your permit number from your registration card." This was the procedure. This was safe. James Chen unshouldered his pack. His wife did the same. He produced a laminated card from his jacket pocket and read the number. Ket-47392. I checked the registry. The number matched. Permit filed 6 days prior. Emergency contact. James's brother in Seattle, first name David. "Sir, what is your emergency contact's first name?" "David Chen." Ma'am, same question. My emergency contact is my mother. Her name is Hui Ling. I checked the registry again. Both answers were correct. Please turn to face the sun. They turned. The afternoon light was slanted but strong enough. Both of them cast shadows on the gravel. James's shadow was perhaps 3 inches shorter than it should have been, but shadows compress at low angles. I noted it in the log anyway. Open your packs, please. I need to count the contents. James had 17 items. His manifest listed 15. 2 over. Within tolerance, Hoyling had 22 items. Her manifest listed 21. 1 over. Within tolerance. Their boots were caked with mud and pine needles. I processed them, signed the recovery form, radioed Garrett with the good news, and walked them back to the station for water and first aid. They'd been lost for 4 days, surviving on granola bars and filtered creek water. They were dehydrated, frightened, and grateful. That night, after they'd been evacuated by float plane, I sat in the radio room and realized I hadn't thought about the rules at all. I'd just followed them. The Chens had been legitimate, lost and scared, and entirely human. But I also realized something else. I'd been relieved when their shadows matched. I'd been relieved when their boots were dirty. I'd been relieved when they remembered their emergency contacts' names, which meant that somewhere, at some point, those tests had failed. I requested the incident archives from Garrett during the next supply drop. He brought them in a sealed plastic crate labeled "Reference Only, Do Not Remove from Station." "You don't have to read these," he said. "I want to understand." Understanding isn't the job. He set the crate on the radio room desk. Compliance is the job, but I can't stop you from reading. The crate contained 41 incident reports spanning 14 years. I read them over the next 3 nights, taking notes, cross-referencing the dates with the logbook entries. Here is what I learned. In 2011, a ranger named Patricia Volk responded to a knock at the station door at 11:47 p.m. The knock came twice. She opened the door after the second knock. Her replacement found the station empty. 3 weeks later, Patricia's boots were on the porch. Nothing else. In 2015, a missing hiker named Robert Tanaka returned after 9 days. The ranger on duty, a man named Yi, verified the permit number and the emergency contact, but Robert's pack contained 43 items. His manifest listed 12. Yi processed him anyway, because he was alone and couldn't follow Protocol 6. Robert stayed in the main station overnight because Yi felt sorry for him. In the morning, Robert was gone. So were all the maps. So were Yi's notes for the past 2 weeks. Yi resigned by radio 3 days later. The rescue team found him walking Trail 7 in the wrong direction. He couldn't remember his name. He couldn't remember how to get home. He's still in a care facility in Anchorage. In 2019, Margaret Okafor, the wildlife photographer on my board, the one missing for 6 weeks, returned to the station at 1:52 a.m. The ranger on duty, a woman named Sarah Polk, made the mistake of looking toward the north tree line when she heard Margaret calling. She looked for 11 seconds. In her incident report, filed 3 days later from a hospital in Ketchikan, Sarah described what she saw in the tree line as Margaret, but wrong. Too many joints, smiling too wide, moving like the film was running backward. Sarah never said what happened during those 11 seconds. The report noted that she was found the next morning in the intake shelter, with the door locked from inside, her fingernails torn, and no memory of the previous 6 hours. Margaret Okafor was still listed as missing. I put the reports back in the crate. I checked the locks on the station door. I checked them again. Then I rewrote the rules in larger letters and taped them to the wall above my cot. 2 weeks passed. I processed 4 more returning hikers, all legitimate. Muddy boots, correct permit numbers, correct emergency contacts, shadow verification before dusk. The procedure became routine. I stopped thinking of the rules as arbitrary and started thinking of them as grammar, the basic structure that made communication possible. But Douglas Venn was still missing. The solo backpacker, last seen near the glacier. 26 days now. His file sat on my desk like a weight. On day 31, at 4:12 p.m., I saw movement near the glacier. I was on the station porch, logging the afternoon temperature and wind speed, when I caught it at the edge of my vision. A figure, small at that distance, maybe 2 miles out, moving along the moraine below the ice field. I raised my binoculars. The figure was walking toward the station, male build, dark jacket, orange pack. Douglas Venn's permit described him as male, 5'10", with a dark blue jacket and an orange osprey pack. I radioed Garrett. Possible MP recovery in progress. Venn, Douglas, approaching from the glacier. ETA approximately 2 hours at current pace. Copy that. Garrett's voice was flat. Remember Protocol 10? I remember. Process at dawn, no exceptions. Understood. I watched Douglas Venn walk toward the station for the next hour and 40 minutes. He moved steadily, neither fast nor slow, and he didn't stop to rest. At 6:03 p.m., when he was close enough to see without binoculars, the sun went behind the mountains. I couldn't verify his shadow. He reached the intake shelter at 6:29 p.m. I was waiting on the porch, 214 yards away, with my flashlight and my radio and a copy of the rules in my pocket. Hello? His voice carried across the distance. It sounded normal, tired, but normal. I'm Douglas Venn. I filed a permit. I got lost near the glacier. Is anyone there? I keyed the radio. Channel 4, this is Station 9. MP recovery, Venn, Douglas. Subject arrived at intake shelter at 1829. Sun is down. Requesting guidance on Protocol 10. The radio hissed, then Garrett's voice. Protocol 10 is clear. Process at dawn. Tell him to wait. I took a breath. Then I walked halfway to the intake shelter and stopped. Mr. Venn, I need you to wait in the shelter until morning. There's a cot inside, and the heater is functional. I'll bring you water and food, but the intake process has to wait until dawn. What? Why? His voice sounded confused, frustrated, human. I've been out there for a month. I nearly died. I need medical attention. Are you injured? No, not injured, but I'm exhausted. I need to come inside. The shelter is warm. You'll be safe there. I'll check on you every hour. He was quiet for a long time. Then, Okay, fine. Whatever the protocol is. I brought him water, a thermal blanket, and 2 MREs. I didn't enter the shelter. I set the supplies on the step outside and told him to take them after I'd returned to the station. Back on the porch, I watched him open the shelter door, collect the supplies, and go inside. He closed the door. The light came on. At 11:17 p.m., someone knocked on the station door. 1 knock. I stood in the center of the room, my hand on the logbook, and waited. A second knock came at 11:18 p.m. I didn't move. The third knock came at 11:21 p.m. I walked to the door, unlocked it, and opened it. Douglas Venn was standing on the porch. He was smiling. His teeth looked wet in the porch light. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "The shelter's too cold. Can I come inside?" The intake shelter was 214 yards away. I had watched him go inside at 6:31 p.m. The light was still on. The door was still closed. I looked at the man on my porch. "What's your permit number?" I asked. "I don't remember. I've been lost for a month." "What's your emergency contact's first name?" He tilted his head. The motion was wrong, too smooth, like his neck was on a swivel instead of a joint. "My emergency contact is my mother," he said. "Her name is..." He paused. His smile didn't waver. "Her name is Mother." Douglas Venn's emergency contact was his roommate in Fairbanks. First name, Kyle. I stepped back and closed the door. I locked it. I locked it again. "It's cold out here," the thing on the porch said. Its voice hadn't changed. Still friendly. Still tired. "You're being rude. Let me in." I didn't answer. I walked to the radio room, picked up the handset, and keyed Channel 4. "Channel 4, this is Station 9, Code Larch. Repeat, Code Larch. MP Venn presenting at station door with incorrect identification responses. Shelter light still active. Requesting immediate guidance." The radio hissed. Then Garrett. "Copy Larch. Confirm shelter light status." I went to the window that faced southwest and looked. The intake shelter light was on. Through the small window, I could see a shape lying on the cot. "Shelter light active," I said. "Subject visible inside shelter." Repeat, subject visible inside shelter. Identical subject currently at station door. Do not open the door. Do not acknowledge the subject. Maintain radio contact until 0430. At dawn, verify shelter subject with standard intake. Do not process door subject under any circumstances. Understood. Station 9, do you understand the instruction? I understand. Good. Garrett out. I sat down in the radio room with my back to the north wall. Outside, the thing that looked like Douglas Venn knocked on the door again. 1 knock. I counted the seconds. 2 knocks. I counted the seconds. 3 knocks. I didn't move. "I know you can hear me," it said. Its voice was still friendly, but there was something underneath it now. Something like static. "I know the rules too. 3 knocks, right? 3 knocks, and you have to answer. So answer me." I didn't answer. "I'm cold," it said. "I'm so cold. I've been cold for 31 days. The glacier isn't a place, you know. The glacier is a door, and doors work both ways." I put my hands over my ears and closed my eyes. I stayed that way until 1:45 a.m. Then I opened my eyes and stared at my hands. I didn't look toward the north tree line. The thing outside the door spoke for most of the night. Sometimes it sounded like Douglas Venn. Sometimes it sounded like Sarah Polk. Once, briefly, it sounded like my mother, who had been dead for 3 years, asking me why I'd taken a job so far from home. I didn't answer. I didn't open the door. At 4:31 a.m., the sky began to lighten. At 4:47 a.m., I looked out the window. The porch was empty. There were no footprints in the frost. I waited until full dawn. Then I walked to the intake shelter with my radio, my flashlight, and the registry binder. Douglas Venn was lying on the cot. He was breathing. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. When I opened the door, he sat up slowly. "What time is it?" he asked. 6:14 a.m. "I need to process your intake." "Okay." He rubbed his face. I had the strangest dreams. I verified his permit number. KET 48927. Correct. I verified his emergency contact. Kyle, his roommate in Fairbanks. Correct. I counted the items in his pack, 19. His manifest listed 17. 2 over, with intolerance. His boots were caked with glacier silt and mud. I waited. The sun was fully up now, slanting through the shelter's window. Douglas Venn cast a shadow. I processed him. I radioed for evacuation. I walked him to the station and gave him water and food, and didn't explain why he'd had to spend the night in the shelter. And he didn't ask. He seemed dazed, which was normal. He'd been lost near the glacier for 31 days. Some missing hikers come back wrong, but some of them come back right, and your job is to know the difference. The float plane took Douglas Venn away at 9:43 a.m. I spent the rest of the day inventorying supplies and writing my incident report. When Garrett arrived for the supply drop 2 days later, he read the report without comment, then handed me a new sheet of paper. Amendments, he said, effective immediately. I read the amendments. There were 8 of them. 13. If an MP subject appears at the station door while an identical subject is confirmed inside the intake shelter, do not acknowledge the door subject verbally or visually until dawn. Do not open the door under any circumstances. 14. If any subject references the glacier as a door or similar terminology, radio channel 4 with code crevasse and await instruction. Do not engage in conversation. 15. If any subject mimics the voice of a known deceased person, cover your ears and recite your service number aloud until the mimicry stops. Do not respond to questions posed in the mimicked voice. 16. Effective immediately. All MP recoveries from within 3 miles of the glacier require dual ranger verification. If you are alone, the subject must remain in the intake shelter for a minimum of 72 hours before processing. 17. The intake shelter door must now be locked from the outside between sunset and dawn. Key 7 must be secured in the station safe during these hours. Do not leave Key 7 in your pocket after dark. 18. If the intake shelter light goes out between sunset and 4:30 a.m., do not approach the shelter to investigate. Radio channel 4 with code blackout and await instruction. 19. If you hear your own voice calling to you from outside the station, do not respond. Do not investigate. Barricade the door and radio channel 4 immediately. 20. The North Tree Line observation ban is extended, effective immediately. Do not look toward the North Tree Line between 1:30 a.m. and 2:45 a.m. I taped the amendments next to the original list. There's been more activity near the glacier, Garrett said. He was restocking the flare cabinet, not looking at me. The Venn incident matches a pattern we've seen before. 2016, 2019, now this. Every few years, something comes down from the ice. We don't know what it is. We don't need to know. We just need to know how to handle it. What happens if you don't follow the rules? He stopped restocking. He looked at me. You read the archives. I read the archives. Then you know. I did know. Patricia Volk, gone after responding to the second knock. Yi, walking Trail 7 with no memory of his own name. Sarah Polk, fingernails torn, 6 hours erased. The rules work, Garrett said. They've worked for 14 years. That's all that matters. I nodded. He left the next morning. I was alone again. The next 3 weeks were quiet. April bled into May, and the days grew longer, which meant more time for shadow verification, which meant easier processing. I logged 2 more MP recoveries, a lost day hiker and an elderly man who'd wandered off from a guided tour, and both were clean. Permit numbers matched. Emergency contacts remembered. Shadows cast. Boots dirty. I started to relax. That was my first mistake. On day 54, at 10:36 p.m., the intake shelter light went out. I was in the radio room, updating the weather log, when I saw it happen. One moment the light was on, a warm yellow glow visible through the southwest window. The next moment, it was dark. I looked at the clock. Sunset had been at 9:48 p.m. It was now 10:36 p.m. The light had been on for 48 minutes after sunset. It should have stayed on until 4:30 a.m. I picked up the radio. Channel 4, this is Station 9, code blackout. Intake shelter, light out at 22:36, awaiting instruction. The radio hissed, static, then nothing. Channel 4, this is Station 9, repeat, code blackout. Please respond. Static. I tried Channel 9, static. I tried Channels 2 through 8, all static. I checked the radio's battery level, 93%. I checked the antenna connection, solid. I checked the weather conditions, clear sky, no precipitation, wind at 7 miles per hour from the southwest. Nothing that should cause radio interference. I tried Channel 4 again. This is Station 9, code blackout. Does anyone copy? A voice came through the static, but it wasn't Garrett. It wasn't dispatch. It was my own voice, speaking words I hadn't said. Station 9, this is Station 9. I'm coming inside. Open the door. I turned off the radio. For a long moment, I sat in the dark, listening to my own breathing. Then I got up, checked the station door locks, 3 locks, all engaged, and dragged the heavy filing cabinet in front of the door. The amendments were clear. If I heard my own voice calling from outside, I was to barricade the door and radio Channel 4. But Channel 4 was compromised, and the radio was compromised, and the intake shelter light was out, which meant something was wrong at the shelter, and I couldn't investigate until dawn. I had 7 hours to wait. At 11:15 p.m., someone knocked on the door. 1 knock. I counted seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 2 knocks. I counted seconds, 90 seconds, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 knocks. I stood in the center of the room. Protocol 9 said to respond after the 3rd knock, but Protocol 19 said not to respond if I heard my own voice calling from outside, and I had heard my own voice. Did that override the 3rd knock rule? The amendments didn't clarify. Hello, called a voice from outside. It was a woman's voice, not my voice. Is anyone there? I'm lost. I need help. I didn't answer. Please, the voice said. I've been walking for hours. I saw the light go out at the little building, but I came here instead. Please open the door. I looked at the clock, 11:22 p.m. What's your permit number? I called through the door. Silence. I need your permit number before I can help you. I don't have a permit, the voice said. I wasn't supposed to be out here. I got lost. Please, I'm so cold. There was no one on my missing persons board who matched a woman's voice without a permit. The only active case was Margaret Okafor, who had been missing for 7 weeks. Her file was in the presumed stack. What's your name? My name is... A pause. Margaret. My name is Margaret. I stepped back from the door. What's your emergency contact's first name, Margaret? A longer pause. Then, I don't have an emergency contact. I was traveling alone. Please, I'm so cold. I can't feel my hands. I checked Margaret Okafor's file. Emergency contact. Her sister in Portland. First name, Grace. I'm sorry, I said. I can't open the door until dawn. There's a shelter 200 yards southwest of here. Go there and wait." "I tried the shelter," the voice said. "The door is locked, and there's something inside, something that isn't right." I closed my eyes. The intake shelter door should have been locked. I'd locked it myself at sunset, per Protocol 17, and secured the key in the station safe. "What do you mean, something inside?" "It looks like me," the voice said. "But it's not me. It's lying on the cot, staring at the ceiling. It doesn't blink. It doesn't breathe. Please let me in. I can't stay out here with that thing." I didn't answer. "Please," the voice said. Its tone changed, flattened. "Please, I'm so cold. I've been cold for 7 weeks. The glacier took me, and now it won't let me go. You have to help me." Code crevasse. She'd referenced the glacier in terminology consistent with Protocol 14. "I'm sorry," I said. "I can't help you tonight. Go to the shelter. Wait until dawn. The shelter is locked. Then wait outside the shelter. I'll die. Then wait." The voice outside the door was silent for a long time. Then it laughed. The sound was wrong, too high, too long, oscillating in pitch like a signal searching for a frequency. "You're good," it said. "You follow the rules. I like that. The last one didn't follow the rules. Sarah didn't follow the rules. Do you know what happened to Sarah?" I didn't answer. "I showed her what I really look like," the voice said. "Just for 11 seconds. That's all it took. 11 seconds. And she couldn't remember her own name for 3 days. I wonder how long it would take for you." I sat down on the floor with my back to the wall. I put my hands over my ears. I closed my eyes. The voice outside kept talking. It talked about the glacier. It talked about the door. It talked about what was waiting on the other side, not in words I could understand, but in sounds that felt like words, sounds that crawled into my skull and tried to make themselves at home. At 1:28 a.m., I remembered Protocol 4. The North Treeline ban started at 1:30 a.m. under the amendments, but the station door faced south. Was looking at the door the same as looking north? I kept my eyes closed anyway. At 1:31 a.m., I heard footsteps circling the station. Slow, deliberate footsteps, crunching in the frost. They went around once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th rotation, they stopped directly beneath the north window. I didn't look. "I can wait," the voice said. It wasn't coming from the door anymore. It was coming from the north window. "I've waited 7 weeks. I've waited 11 years. Time doesn't work the same way for me anymore. But you only have until dawn. And dawn is so far away." I recited my service number aloud, over and over, until my voice was hoarse and my throat was raw. I counted seconds. I counted minutes. I counted the 94 flares in the cabinet, the 12 keys on the ring, the 7 days until the next supply drop. At 2:46 a.m., I opened my eyes. The North Treeline ban had ended 1 minute earlier. There was nothing at the north window, nothing on the porch. The footsteps had stopped sometime in the last hour, and I hadn't noticed. I waited until dawn. At 6:02 a.m., I moved the filing cabinet away from the door. At 6:14 a.m., I unlocked the 3 locks and opened the door. The porch was empty. There were no footprints in the frost. I walked to the intake shelter. Key 7 was still in the safe. I retrieved it, unlocked the shelter door, and looked inside. The cot was empty. The blankets were folded. The heater was off. But on the metal desk next to the registry binder, someone had left a photograph. The photograph showed a woman standing at the edge of the glacier. She was smiling. She had a camera around her neck. On the back of the photograph, in handwriting I didn't recognize, someone had written, "Margaret Okafor, day 1. She was so happy to be here." I filed the photograph in Margaret's case folder. I radioed Garrett and reported the incident. He listened without interrupting, then asked me one question. "Did you open the door?" "No." "Good." The next supply drop was in 6 days. Garrett arrived with ammunition, batteries, and a new set of instructions. These were called emergency protocols, and they applied only during specific conditions: extended radio blackout, multi-night power failure, or what Garrett called sustained contact. The protocols were numbered 21 through 25. Shotgen during extended radio blackout, exceeding 4 hours, retreat to the interior room of the station, the room with no exterior windows. Seal the door with weather stripping. Do not exit the room until radio contact is restored or dawn arrives, whichever comes first. 22. During multi-night power failure, the intake shelter is considered non-operational. Do not process any MP subjects until power is restored. Direct all subjects to wait at the trailhead marker, 300 yards southeast of the station. Do not approach the trailhead marker after dark. 23. During sustained contact, defined as verbal communication with an unverified subject exceeding 30 minutes, cease all response and begin the silence protocol. Silence protocol requires the following: no spoken words, no written communication visible from outside, no lights in the main station. Maintain silence until contact ceases for a minimum of 2 consecutive hours. 24. If you observe 2 or more subjects that appear identical, do not engage with either. Retreat to the interior room immediately. Radio channel 4 with code mirror if communication is possible. If communication is not possible, wait for dawn and verify both subjects using standard intake procedures. Process only the subject that passes all verification checks. Do not process the other subject. Do not explain why. 25. If the glacier advances more than 50 yards toward the station in any 24-hour period, evacuate immediately via Trail 3. Do not wait for float plane extraction. Do not return to the station. Radio channel 9 with code retreat. And proceed to the emergency cache at mile marker 7. Await rescue there. I read protocol 25 3 times. Has the glacier ever advanced? I asked. Garrett looked at me. His face was unreadable. Once, he said. In 2019, 53 yards in 16 hours. The ranger on duty didn't evacuate. Sarah Polk. Sarah Polk. What happened to her? She's alive, Garrett said. She's in a care facility in Ketchikan. She can't sleep without the lights on. She can't look at photographs of mountains. She can't remember what her job was or why she was out here. But she's alive. Because she followed the rules. Because she followed most of the rules. He picked up his pack. The float plane's waiting. I'll be back in 6 days. Radio check every 12 hours. Code 9 for emergencies. I watched him walk down to the dock. I watched the float plane take off and disappear over the ridgeline. Then I went inside and read the protocols again. On day 73, a trainee arrived. His name was Marcus Chen, no relation to the married couple I'd processed in April. And he was 24 years old, fresh out of the seasonal ranger program, and enthusiastic in a way that made my chest hurt. He'd requested backcountry assignment specifically. He wanted to see the real Alaska. I showed him the station. I showed him the radio room, the supply closet, the basement door that stayed locked after dark. I showed him the intake shelter and explained the procedures. Then I showed him the rules. He read them in silence. His face changed as he read, from confusion to skepticism to something that might have been fear. "This is real?" he asked. "It's real." "You've seen these things? The stuff in the rules?" "I've seen enough." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "What happens if I don't follow them?" I handed him the incident archives. "Read these tonight, then decide if you still want to stay." He read them. He stayed. For the first 2 weeks, Marcus followed procedures perfectly. He verified permit numbers before making eye contact. He counted pack contents. He performed shadow verification before sundown. He didn't respond to the first knock or the second knock. He covered his ears during the North Tree Line observation ban. But Marcus was curious in a way I had stopped being. He asked questions I had learned not to ask. Why did the glacier send things back wrong? What was on the other side of the door? How did the rules get written in the first place? "The rules work," I told him. "That's all that matters." "But someone must have figured them out. Someone must have tested them. How many people died before they got it right?" I didn't have an answer. I didn't want to have an answer. On day 89 at 1:47 a.m., Marcus looked toward the North Tree Line. I was in the interior room, following Protocol 21 after a radio blackout that had started at 9:15 p.m. The blackout lasted 4 hours and 27 minutes, which triggered the retreat protocol. I sealed the door with weather stripping and waited. Marcus was supposed to be in the interior room with me, but at 1:32 a.m., he said he had to use the bathroom. The bathroom was on the exterior wall, with a small window that faced north. "Hold it," I said. "The band started 2 minutes ago." "I'll be 30 seconds. I won't look outside." "Marcus!" But he was already gone. At 1:47 a.m., I heard him scream. The sound lasted 11 seconds. I know because I counted. 11 seconds. And then silence. I didn't leave the interior room. Protocol 21 was clear. Do not exit until radio contact is restored or dawn arrives. Marcus had broken protocol. Marcus had looked. At 2:46 a.m., the radio crackled to life. "Station 9, this is dispatch. Radio check. Station 9, receiving. Code mirror. Trainee Chen observed North Tree Line at 01:47 during observation ban. Status unknown. Requesting immediate guidance." A pause. Then, copy mirror. Do not exit interior room until dawn. Verify trainee status using standard protocol at first light. Do not engage if trainee is non-responsive or presents anomalies. Dispatch out. I waited until 6:03 a.m. Then I unsealed the interior room door and walked to the bathroom. Marcus was sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. His hands were pressed against his ears. "Marcus!" He didn't respond. "Marcus, can you hear me?" His lips moved. No sound came out. I crouched in front of him. "Marcus, I need you to tell me your service number." He blinked, slowly, like his eyelids weighed 1,000 pounds. Then he said, in a voice barely above a whisper, "It's not a glacier, it's a mouth. The mountain is eating, and we're standing in its teeth. Marcus, service number, now." He shook his head. I saw it. I saw what was waiting. It's patient. It's so patient. It's been waiting since before the trees, before the ice, before anything. And it's hungry. It's always hungry. I radioed for evacuation. The float plane arrived at 10:14 a.m. Marcus walked to the dock under his own power, but he didn't speak. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anything except the ground directly in front of his feet. At the edge of the dock, he stopped. "The rules aren't protection," he said. His voice was flat, empty. "They're just a menu. They're teaching it what we do, how we respond, how we can be taken. Every rule is a new dish. Every protocol is a recipe. And someday it's going to have enough recipes to cook us all." He got on the float plane. He didn't look back. I filed the incident report. I noted the exact time of exposure, 11 seconds, and the exact location, north window, bathroom. I noted his words as accurately as I could remember them. I didn't know if they were true. I wasn't sure it mattered. The glacier advanced 17 yards that night. The next morning, it had retreated to its original position. I measured it twice to be sure. After Marcus left, I was alone again. The days stretched into weeks. June became July. The sun stayed up for 20 hours at a time, which made the rules easier to follow. Shadow verification was possible until nearly midnight. The North Treeline observation band still applied, but the window was shorter, the darkness less absolute. But the rules weren't enough anymore. I started adding my own amendments, unofficial notes in the margins of my field notebook. I started timing the footsteps that circled the station, always between midnight and 3 a.m., always exactly 94 steps per rotation. I started counting the knocks, sometimes 1, sometimes 2, never 4, never more than 3. I started cataloging the voices I heard. By mid-July, I had documented 17 distinct voices. 3 of them belonged to people on my missing persons board. 2 of them belonged to rangers who had worked this station before me. 1 of them was my mother. 1 of them was me. On day 112, Margaret Okafor came back. I saw her at 4:23 p.m., walking down from the ridgeline on Trail 4. She was moving slowly, which was consistent with exhaustion. She was carrying a camera around her neck, which matched her file. She was smiling. I went to the intake shelter and waited. She reached the shelter at 5:07 p.m. The sun was still high. Shadow verification would be possible for hours. "Hello?" she called. "Is someone there? I'm Margaret Okafor. I filed a permit in March. I got lost near the glacier. Stop there, please." My voice was steady. I had done this before. "Remove your pack and set it on the ground. Read me your permit number from your registration card." She unshouldered her pack. She reached into her jacket pocket and produced a laminated card. Ket-39421. I checked the registry. The number matched. Permit filed in early March. 8 weeks ago, Protocol 16. MP recoveries from within 3 miles of the glacier require dual ranger verification. If you are alone, the subject must remain in the intake shelter for a minimum of 72 hours before processing. I was alone. "Ma'am, what is your emergency contact's first name?" "Grace." She smiled. "My sister. She's probably worried sick." "Correct." "Please turn to face the sun." She turned. The afternoon light was strong and direct. Margaret Okafor cast a shadow. The shadow was the correct length, the correct shape, the correct opacity. "Open your pack, please. I need to count the contents." She opened her pack. I counted 24 items. Her manifest listed 23. 1 over. Within tolerance. Her boots were caked with glacier silt. Everything was correct. Permit number, emergency contact, shadow, pack count, boot condition. Every test passed. But Margaret Okafor had been missing for 8 weeks, 56 days, more than 72 hours. Protocol 12 said not to discuss the rules with anyone missing for more than 72 hours. And she was smiling. 8 weeks lost near a glacier, and she was smiling like she'd just come back from a pleasant afternoon hike. "Ma'am, I need you to wait in the shelter until the next supply drop. Standard procedure for extended recovery." Her smile flickered, just for a moment. Then it was back, warm and patient. "Of course," she said, "whatever the protocol requires. But could I ask, why 72 hours? Surely if I passed all the tests." I didn't answer. Protocol 12. "Right," she said. "The rules. You can't discuss the rules with me." I stepped back. "You know," she said, "I spent 8 weeks out there. 8 weeks in the cold, in the ice, in the dark. Do you know what I learned?" I didn't answer. I learned that the rules aren't really rules. They're negotiations. Whoever wrote them, whoever figured all this out, they weren't protecting people. They were making deals. "If we give you this, you leave us alone for a while. If we do this ritual, you take someone else instead. Every rule is a payment. Every protocol is a price." I walked back toward the station. I didn't run. "The price is going up," Margaret called after me. "It's been going up for years. The rules get longer. The procedures get stricter. The waiting periods get extended. Do you know what that means?" I reached the station porch. I went inside. I locked the door. "It means it's getting hungrier," Margaret said. Her voice shouldn't have carried that far. The shelter was 214 yards away, but I heard her clearly, as if she were standing right beside me. "And eventually, no rule will be enough. Eventually, the price will be too high. And then it will come to collect." I sealed the door with weather stripping. I retreated to the interior room. I radioed Channel 4 with code, larch and crevasse and mirror, because I didn't know which one applied, because the tests had all passed, but nothing about this felt right. Dispatch responded, "Copy all codes. Maintain shelter containment for 72 hours. Do not process subject until secondary verification from Garrett on supply drop. Do not engage in conversation. Do not respond to questions. Dispatch out." I waited. Margaret stayed in the shelter. I brought her food and water every 8 hours, leaving the supplies outside the door, never entering, never speaking. She stopped trying to talk to me after the first day. She just smiled every time I came near. That patient, knowing smile. The 72 hours passed. Garrett arrived on day 115 with the supply drop. I briefed him on the situation. He read my notes, checked my records, and walked to the intake shelter with a hard expression on his face. I watched from the station porch. Garrett entered the shelter. He was inside for 43 minutes. When he came out, his face was pale. "She passed," he said. "All of them. Every test, permit, contact, shadow, pack count, boot condition. I added 3 more tests we don't usually run. Blood oxygen, pupil response, verbal recall for specific details from her permit application. She passed all of them. So we process her." Garrett looked at the shelter. Margaret was visible through the window, sitting on the cot, smiling. "No," he said. "We don't." "But the protocols?" "The protocols don't account for this." He handed me a new sheet of paper. "New amendment, effective immediately. Anyone missing for more than 30 days is automatically refused, regardless of test results. We evacuate them to Ketchikan for extended observation. We don't process them here." I looked at the amendment. It was numbered 26. 26. Any MP subject missing for more than 30 days is classified as extended recovery and cannot be processed at Station 9. Transport immediately to the Ketchikan facility for secondary evaluation. Do not explain the reason for transport. Do not answer questions about the evaluation process. What happens at the Ketchikan facility? Garrett didn't answer. Garrett, what happens to them? He started walking back to the float plane. You don't need to know. You just need to follow the rules. Margaret Okafor was evacuated at 2:47 p.m. She went quietly, still smiling. As the float plane lifted off, she pressed her face against the window and looked at me. She didn't wave. She didn't speak. She just looked with those patient eyes until the plane disappeared over the ridgeline. I never found out what happened to her. I never asked. The summer ended. The days grew shorter. The observation band stretched longer, and the shadows became harder to verify. And the rules that had seemed manageable in June became exhausting in September. But I followed them. Every rule, every amendment, every protocol. I verified and counted and measured and waited. I sealed the doors and covered the windows and listened to the voices outside and didn't answer, didn't respond, didn't engage. On day 143, I received a letter from the regional office. My contract was up for renewal. They were offering me another year at the same rate, or I could transfer to a station closer to town, standard duties, no special supplements. I thought about it for a long time. Then I wrote my response. Renewal accepted. The glacier was 16 yards closer than when I'd arrived. I measured it every morning. Some days it advanced, some days it retreated. But on average, over time, it was moving toward us, toward the station, toward the intake shelter, toward me. I didn't know what would happen when it arrived. The rules didn't say. Maybe there was no rule for that. Maybe when the glacier finally reached the station, the negotiations would be over and the payment would come due. But until then, my job was to wait and to follow procedures and to make sure the next person understood what this place demanded. The September supply drop brought a new trainee. Her name was Elena Vasquez. She was 27, former military, practical in a way that reminded me of myself 10 months ago. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. She didn't speculate about what the rules meant or where they came from. She just read them, nodded, and asked what time the first patrol started. I began her orientation that night. Rules 1 through 12, Amendments 13 through 26, Emergency Protocols 21 through 25. She took notes. She asked clarifying questions. She didn't express disbelief or skepticism. At the end, she asked one question. Does anyone ever get used to this? I thought about the footsteps circling the station, 94 steps, every rotation, for 143 nights. I thought about the voices I'd stopped recognizing as individual people and started categorizing as data points. I thought about the smile on Margaret Okafor's face and the flatness in Marcus Chen's eyes and the empty boots on Patricia Volk's porch. You get precise, I said. That's not the same as getting used to it. She nodded. Good. I don't want to get used to it. I just want to survive. Then follow the rules. Even if they're payments, even if they're negotiations. I looked at her. She was watching me carefully, measuring my response. Especially then, I said, because the alternative is paying a price you can't afford. That night, at 11:18 p.m., someone knocked on the station door. One knock. Elena looked at me. I shook my head. We waited. 2 knocks. We waited. 3 knocks. I stood up. I walked to the door. Elena followed 2 steps behind. Who's there? I called. Station 9, this is dispatch. A voice I didn't recognize. We received your radio check. Everything okay up there? I looked at Elena. She raised an eyebrow. "When did we send a radio check?" I whispered. "We didn't." I keyed the radio on the desk. "Channel 4, this is Station 9. Verify last radio contact." Static. Then Garrett's voice. "Station 9, last contact was at 1400 hours. 6 hours ago. No subsequent traffic logged." I looked at the door. "Station 9, this is dispatch," the voice outside said again. "Please respond. We need to verify your status." The voice was patient, friendly, almost right. But dispatch didn't come to the station. Dispatch was in Ketchikan, 100 miles away. And dispatch didn't knock. They used the radio. "Don't respond," I said to Elena. "Don't open the door." I wasn't going to. We retreated to the interior room. We sealed the door with weather stripping. We waited. Outside, the thing that wasn't dispatch walked around the station, 94 steps exactly, and then stopped. "You're learning," it said. Its voice had changed. It wasn't pretending to be dispatch anymore. It didn't sound like anyone I knew. It sounded like wind through a crevasse, like ice cracking under pressure, like something old and patient and hungry. "The rules are getting harder to follow," it said. "More amendments, more protocols, more exceptions and conditions and time windows. Someday there will be too many to remember. Someday you'll make a mistake, and I'll be waiting." Elena looked at me. Her face was calm. "It's right," she whispered. "The rules are getting complicated. Eventually someone will slip." "Then we make them simpler," I said. "We find the core, the essential, and we cut everything else." "Can we do that?" I didn't know, but I knew we had to try. When dawn came, the porch was empty. No footprints, no evidence. Just the station and the intake shelter, 214 yards away. And the glacier sitting on the horizon like a patient predator. I spent the next week rewriting the rules. I went through every amendment, every protocol, and stripped them down to their core principles. No redundancies, no exceptions without clear triggers, no conditions that couldn't be tested in under 60 seconds. Elena helped. She had a military mind for logistics, for reducing complex procedures to their essential components. Together, we created a new document, not a replacement for the old rules, but a distillation, something that could be memorized and followed under pressure. The essential rules numbered 9. The conditional amendments numbered 7. The emergency protocols remained at 5. I sent the new document to Garrett by radio. He didn't respond for 3 days. Then he said, "Approved. Distribute to all incoming personnel." I wrote out the new rules by hand in clean block letters on laminated paper that could survive weather and blood and time. I made 12 copies. I stored them in the station safe, in the intake shelter desk, in the emergency cache at mile marker 7, and I prepared a clean rule set for the next person. Because someday I would leave, by choice or by evacuation or by something worse, and someone would take my place. They would need to understand what this place demanded, and they would need to understand it quickly, without confusion, without room for error. The rules I prepared were these. 1. All returning hikers are processed at the intake shelter, never the main station. The shelter is 214 yards southwest. Key 7 opens it. 2. Verify permit number before eye contact. Verify emergency contact's first name. Verify shadow before sundown. Count pack contents against manifest. 3-item variants allowed. Check boot condition against terrain. All 5 tests must pass. 3. Never respond if anyone calls you by name before you introduce yourself. 4. Between 1:30 a.m. and 2:45 a.m., do not look toward the north tree line. Look at your hands, the floor, or close your eyes. 5. Respond to knocking only after the third knock, never after 1 or 2. 6. Do not acknowledge anyone approaching from Trail 7. 7. Do not discuss these rules with anyone missing more than 72 hours. 8. If the intake shelter light goes out between sunset and 4:30 a.m., do not approach until dawn. 9. If anyone references the glacier as a door, radio code, crevasse, and cease conversation. Conditional amendments. A. Identical subjects present simultaneously. Retreat to interior room, radio code, mirror. Wait for dawn. Process only the one that passes all tests. B. Radio blackout exceeding 4 hours. Retreat to interior room, seal door. Wait for contact or dawn. C. Sustain verbal contact exceeding 30 minutes. Begin silence protocol. No speech, no visible writing, no lights. Maintain until contact ceases for 2 hours. D. Missing person from within 3 miles a glacier. Process at dawn only. If alone, 72-hour shelter containment. E. Missing person over 30 days. Immediate evacuation to Ketchikan. No local processing. F. Your own voice heard outside. Barricade door, radio channel 4, do not investigate. G. Glacier advances 50 yards in 24 hours. Evacuate via Trail 3 to mile marker 7. Do not return. I laminated the pages. I stored them in the places the next person would need them. Then I went back to my patrol, my radio checks, my inventory counts, and my endless waiting. Elena stayed through September and into October. She followed the rules precisely and without complaint. She never made the mistakes Marcus had made. She never asked the questions I had learned not to ask. But one night, late in October, she found me sitting on the station porch, staring at the glacier in the distance. "It's closer," she said. 8 yards since I arrived. 7.5. Does it worry you? I thought about the question. I thought about the rules and the prices and the negotiations. I thought about what Marcus had said, that the rules were a menu, that every protocol was a recipe, and about what Margaret had said, that the price was going up, that eventually no rule would be enough. Worry isn't the right word, I said. I'm not worried. I'm prepared. There's a difference. What's the difference? Worry assumes you can change the outcome. Preparation assumes you can survive it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What if you can't? Survive, I mean. What if the rules stop working?" I looked at her. She was silhouetted against the station lights, her face in shadow. "Then we write new rules," I said. "We adapt. We negotiate. We find the new price and decide if we're willing to pay it. And if the price is too high?" I looked at the glacier. It sat on the horizon, motionless, patient, a white wound in the landscape that never healed, only spread. "Then we walk away," I said. "We leave and we let someone else take the station, and we hope the rules we wrote are enough to keep them safe." Elena nodded. She didn't say anything else. She went back inside, and I sat on the porch until the cold became unbearable, and then I went inside too. The next supply drop brought my transfer orders. I had requested reassignment to the Ketchikan office, administrative work, no backcountry duty. The request had been approved. My replacement was scheduled to arrive in 11 days. I spent those 11 days preparing the station. I inventoried every supply, labeled every cabinet, tested every radio frequency. I updated the logbook with detailed notes on recurring patterns. The footsteps, 94 per rotation, always clockwise. The knocks, most common between 11:15 and 11:45 p.m., always in threes. The voices, 17 documented, 3 still active on my missing persons board. I wrote an orientation letter for the new ranger. It wasn't required, there was no protocol for it, but it felt necessary. Some things couldn't be captured in rules. Some things had to be communicated, person to person. The letter said this: "Welcome to Station 9. You've read the rules by now, and you're probably wondering what the hell you've gotten yourself into. I wondered the same thing 207 days ago when I stepped off the float plane and saw this place for the first time. I'm not going to explain what's out here. The rules do that well enough, and anything I said would just be speculation. But I can tell you what I learned. Follow the rules. Not because you understand them, you won't, but because they work. Every rule exists for a reason. Every amendment was written in blood. The protocols aren't arbitrary. They're the accumulated wisdom of everyone who came before you, distilled into procedures you can follow without thinking. Don't ask why. Why doesn't help. Why just creates doubt, and doubt creates hesitation, and hesitation creates openings. The things out here can feel hesitation, like sharks can feel blood in the water. If you hesitate, they'll know. Trust your counts. Trust your clocks. Trust your measurements. Data is the only thing that's reliable out here. Your senses will lie to you. Your instincts will lie to you. But the numbers don't lie. If something feels wrong, but the numbers check out, trust the numbers. If something feels right, but the numbers don't add up, trust the numbers. Take care of yourself. Eat, sleep, move. The rules are exhausting, and the isolation is worse. If you don't take care of your body, your mind will follow. And if your mind goes, the rules won't save you. Finally, know when to leave. This job will change you. It changed me. I came here practical and skeptical and confident. I'm leaving paranoid and precise and tired. That's the price of survival. But there's a line, a point where the price becomes too high. If you feel yourself approaching that line, put in for transfer. Don't wait. Don't assume you can handle it. The people who thought they could handle it are the ones who ended up walking Trail 7 with no memory of their own names. Good luck. Follow the rules. Survive. I left the letter on the desk in the radio room. I packed my gear. I said goodbye to Elena, who would be staying on as secondary ranger. And on day 208, I boarded the float plane and left Station 9 behind. The glacier was 19 yards closer than when I'd arrived. I noted it in my final logbook entry. I didn't speculate about what it meant. From the air, the station looked small, a tiny wooden structure surrounded by endless forest, dwarfed by mountains that had existed before humans and would exist long after we were gone. The intake shelter was a speck. The glacier was a white tongue licking down from the peaks, patient and slow and hungry. I watched until the station disappeared behind the ridgeline. Then I closed my eyes and tried to remember what it felt like to be someone who didn't flinch at knocking, who didn't count footsteps, who didn't measure shadows and verify permits and radio codes in a specific order for a specific reason. I couldn't remember. That person was gone. The float plane landed in Ketchikan at 4:37 p.m. I stepped off onto solid concrete, surrounded by buildings and people and traffic and noise. It felt foreign, like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. Garrett was waiting at the terminal. He looked older than I remembered, or maybe I just hadn't noticed before. "How do you feel?" he asked. I thought about the question. I thought about 208 days of rules and procedures and endless vigilance. I thought about Margaret Okafor's patient smile and Marcus Chen's empty eyes, and the voice that sounded like my mother asking why I'd taken a job so far from home. "Precise," I said. "I feel precise." He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Maybe every ranger who survived Station 9 came out feeling the same way. "The office work starts Monday," he said. "Normal hours, normal duties, no supplements." "Okay. It'll take time to adjust. Give yourself that time." "Okay." He drove me to a motel near the harbor. I checked in, went to my room, and sat on the bed without moving for almost an hour. Then I got up, pulled the curtains closed, and checked the locks on the door. 3 locks. I engaged all of them. I set my watch to alarm at 1:30 a.m. and 2:45 a.m. I positioned the bed so I couldn't accidentally see out the window during those times. I counted the items in my bag, 17. I would remember that number. I lay down and closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I listened to the sounds of the city, cars, voices, distant music, and waited for knocking that never came. At dawn, I finally relaxed. Old habits, I told myself. They'll fade. But part of me knew they wouldn't. Part of me knew that the rules weren't just procedures. They were a way of seeing the world, a way of understanding that some things were safe and some things weren't. And the difference wasn't always visible until it was too late. Part of me knew I would spend the rest of my life counting, measuring, verifying, checking shadows, noting times, listening for the third knock. That was the price of survival. That was the payment I'd made. And somewhere, back at Station 9, the glacier was still advancing. The things in the forest were still circling. The voices were still calling. Someone else's problem now. I hoped they followed the rules. 3 months after I left Station 9, I received a letter from Elena. It was handwritten, which was unusual. Most communication was by radio or email. And it was short. The new ranger was named Thomas Park. He had arrived on schedule, completed orientation, and seemed competent. He followed the rules precisely. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. But something was different, Elena wrote. The activity had increased since I left. More footsteps, more knocking, more voices. The glacier had advanced 34 yards in 90 days, more than triple the average rate, and there was something new. Last week, she wrote, I found a note in the intake shelter. It wasn't there the night before. It wasn't written by Thomas or by me. It said, the old ranger left. The new ranger came. The negotiation continues. The price is rising. One of you will pay soon. I read the note 3 times. Then I folded it, put it in a drawer, and tried not to think about what it meant. But late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I found myself staring at the ceiling and counting footsteps that weren't there, counting knocks that never came, counting the days since I'd left, and wondering if leaving had been part of the negotiation too. If my departure had changed something, destabilized something, opened a door that should have stayed closed. I didn't know. I couldn't know. All I could do was follow the rules I'd written for myself. Lock the doors, check the windows. Don't look north between 1:30 and 2:45. Trust the numbers, survive. That was the job. That was always the job. And somewhere, in the back of my mind, a voice that sounded like my own whispered, the price is rising. I didn't answer. I never answer.